Okay, let's unpack this. We spent a lot of time in the past, discussing performance optimization strategy, finding that cutting edge hack that delivers the biggest results. But today we are going completely foundational. Before we talk about how fast you're running, we have to uh, audit the ground you're standing on. We are asking, what is the structure of your reality? And is it sturdy enough to hold the immense weight of your ambitions?
That's the critical juncture, isn't it? Far too often, people, and especially those aiming for, high achievement, they rush to find the next strategy or the next productivity technique. They do this without ever pausing to check the integrity of the intellectual map they're using.
Right.
If the foundational assumptions that govern your decision-making are flawed, then the speed and efficiency with which you execute those decisions, it becomes entirely irrelevant.
You're just getting to the wrong place faster.
Exactly.
Right.
You're simply traveling faster to the wrong destination.
And that really brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We are conducting what is essentially a guided, rigorous audit of your own foundational beliefs. And we're drawing this directly from excerpts of a remarkable text. The Law of Verification. Stop building your life on untested assumptions.
And the core statement, the entire thesis of this philosophy, it's so powerfully and deceptively simple. It's just, I will not build my life on untested assumptions.
That's it. That's the refusal. That's the line in the sand. And the goal here isn't merely to acquire new complex knowledge or to, memorize a new list of facts. The goal is to ensure that the knowledge we already rely on,
The stuff that's already running in the background.
exactly, the core beliefs that dictate our daily actions, our professional trajectory, our relationships, to make sure all of that is rigorously, unflinchingly vetted. We are elevating the standard for what earns the right to guide us.
And the stakes couldn't be higher. They're defined in that accompanying statement. It says, no belief earns the right to guide me until it has survived scrutiny, evidence, and intellectual honesty.
Wow.
This isn't just some philosophical window dressing. This is mandatory quality control for your personal and professional operating system.
I like that. Operating system.
The payoff isn't just intellectual satisfaction. It's that enlightened edge that comes from knowing that the levers you pull in life are reliable, that they're grounded in reality and not just based on wishful thinking.
So when you commit to that level of verification, you really transition from someone who just hopes things work out to someone who trusts the structure they've built. So let's start there with that foundational refusal. What does it actually mean to commit to not building your life on an assumption?
Let's really get into it.
Okay, let's hone in on that very first line. I will not build my life on untested assumptions. The choice of that verb build is so powerful. It really implies architecture, structure, or something permanent.
Yeah, we're not discussing small preferences.
Right, we aren't talking about do I prefer coffee or tea. We are discussing foundational structures. Things like your career path, your retirement strategy, your long-term relationship choices, even your core self-identity.
We almost have to use an analogy from engineering to fully grasp the danger here. Imagine you're engineering a skyscraper. The foundation requires these deep pilings, right? They often have to rest on bedrock.
Okay.
Now, if the original engineer, maybe operating on insufficient data, simply assumes the soil density is uniform bedrock.
But it's not.
But it's not. In fact, there's a hidden pocket of loose sediment or maybe an underground stream, a classic untested assumption. Well, then every single floor built on top of that assumption is structurally compromised.
And that compromise doesn't show up right away, does it?
No, not at all.
The building looks totally fine on a calm day. It's only when stress gets applied.
The high wind.
Yeah, the high winds, or in life, the market downturn, the relationship crisis, the massive project deadline, that's when the hidden flaw in the assumption reveals itself. The structure experiences catastrophic failure.
And the owner is just left wondering why, when the fault was baked into the blueprint from day one.
That's powerful.
Absolutely. The inherent danger of the untested assumption is that it operates as this hidden vulnerability. It makes reliable prediction impossible. A lot of high achievers, they operate based on blueprints they inherited culturally.
From where?
From family narratives, from motivational gurus, from social media. And they do it without running a single verifiable stress test on those ideas.
They just assume things like
I must achieve financial independence by 30, or I'm a failure. Or you can never rely on anyone but yourself in this business. Or maybe my self-worth is directly tied to my professional title.
those are massive life-directing statements. I mean, if you assume you can't trust anyone. That belief dictates who you hire, how you delegate, whether you even allow yourself to be vulnerable in a partnership.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of isolation.
All based on what? A generalized, unverified suspicion. It's incredible.
And the cost, the real cost of this lack of testing, is that when external reality conflicts with your internal assumption, the world feels chaotic.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you assume hard work always equals financial gain. And you work 70 hours a week, but the results just don't follow. You feel personally betrayed, confused, because you lack the intellectual framework to understand why the effort failed.
A verified framework would show you something different.
The verified framework would reveal that strategy or leverage or maybe timing were the missing variables, not effort.
That inability to predict and respond intelligently is the primary reason for adopting the law. It takes us from being sort of victims of chaos to being active agents of calibrated response.
And this brings us right to that crucial definitional threshold in the law. It's where it defines the threshold of guidance. The text states, "No belief earns the right to guide me."
This is a profound distinction, isn't it? Our minds are just generating millions of thoughts and opinions daily. I might have the belief that, I don't know, pineapple belongs on pizza. That's a low-stakes opinion.
Sure, very low stakes.
But if I believe that long-term committed relationships are inherently a weakness that drains professional energy, well, that belief becomes a high-stakes guide.
A guide that influences everything.
Everything. Who I date, the boundaries I set, whether I choose to invest emotionally in a partner.
We have to pause on that difference between a mere belief and true guidance. So many things we carry around are just unexamined preferences or outdated habits or maybe emotional defense mechanisms that are masquerading as objective truth.
Right.
The law of verification demands that for something to guide your actions, for it to be the strategic lever you pull when making a critical or expensive or irreversible choice, it has to meet a profoundly higher standard of proof.
It has to be vetted.
It has to be vetted.
And I think our audience, especially high achievers, they instinctively get this. They recognize that if you are committing significant resources, your time, your capital, your reputation, to a specific path, the foundational beliefs underpinning that path must be verified.
You can't afford to be running an ambitious high-growth company on an autopilot guided by faulty GPS coordinates you inherited from some 1980s business memoir.
That's a great image.
And this is precisely why this law is the bedrock of what's called the level up, the enlightened edge. High achievers, just by their nature, operate at higher stakes, higher complexity, higher velocity.
So the errors they make aren't minor.
No, they're catastrophic. They cannot afford to base critical multi-million-dollar decisions, whether it's scaling strategy, investment portfolio allocation, or even just practical productivity system design on shaky ground.
So if you adopt, say, a trendy productivity hack, like aggressive batching, because some influencer said it worked for them, but your foundational assumption that all similar tasks benefit from batching is actually false for your specific cognitive profile,
then you're in trouble.
you're adopting a strategy that actively degrades your performance.
And the law of verification prevents that. It prevents you from adopting strategies that are fundamentally misaligned with reality, no matter how popular they are.
So verification isn't about finding smarter hacks.
Not at all. It's about ensuring the underlying principles those hacks rest on are verifiable, reliable, and tailored to your reality. If the foundation is true, the resulting strategy is effective. If the foundation is just assumed, the strategy is a gamble.
That definition is so powerful, but it begs the question, how do we actually do this? How do we vet a belief? The law doesn't just ask us to, check our work. It gives us a 3-stage sequential vetting process that a belief must survive.
Right. Scrutiny, evidence, and intellectual honesty.
And these 3 pillars are not optional accessories, are they?
Not at all. They are non-negotiable stages in the auditing process. They represent, in order, the necessary challenge, then the external validation, and finally the psychological acceptance of truth.
Okay, so let's start with pillar 1, scrutiny. What does it actually mean to submit a belief to scrutiny, and how is that different from just, thinking about it really hard?
Well, scrutiny is the process of rigorous, deliberate, and systematic self-examination. It's the intellectual equivalent of a forensic audit, not a casual glance.
Okay, a forensic audit. I like that.
It requires you to actively generate and engage with the most compelling counterarguments to your own belief. So if you believe I'm an amazing negotiator, scrutiny requires you to actually sit down and write. What are the 5 strongest pieces of evidence that show I am a poor negotiator?
Oof, that sounds uncomfortable.
It
It means you have to willfully play devil's advocate against your own deeply held convictions, and the ego fights that tooth and nail.
Absolutely. The necessity of systematic questioning is the core action here. You need to ask, why do I hold this belief?
Trace it back.
Trace its origin. Did it come from observed reality, or was it instilled by a childhood fear? If the origin is purely emotional or authoritative, like my father always said, then the belief is instantly suspect and requires heavy testing.
And what about internal consistency?
Crucially, scrutiny tests for that. Does this belief say all risk is bad, contradict my other belief that high reward requires high risk? If they conflict, the foundation is already cracked.
So scrutiny is really the preparatory phase. It breaks the assumption out of the comfortable echo chamber of your own mind and exposes the stress points.
Exactly. It prepares you for the objective validation that comes next.
Which is pillar 2.
Evidence. Which brings us directly to pillar 2, evidence. Scrutiny reveals where the belief is weakest. Evidence determines whether the belief is externally true, independent of our feelings or wishes.
And this is where we make that decisive shift, right? From subjective comfort, the belief just feeling right, to objective support.
That's the leap.
For a high-achieving audience, this is so vital because their decisions involve high-stakes metrics. So what does verifiable evidence even look like in a business or a personal strategy context?
This is where we need a bit of nuance. We have to move past the simple idea of show me the receipts. We need to classify evidence based on its rigor and its relevance.
So anecdotal evidence is out.
For foundational claims in career strategy or investment, yeah, anecdotal evidence, my friend made a fortune doing X, that's very low-grade evidence. We need to seek statistical relevance, validated studies, cohort analysis, and most importantly, evidence generated through objective testing.
Okay, so if I hold the belief, say, my new marketing campaign will increase signups by 20%. The evidence isn't just seeing a few positive tweets. It requires A/B testing the campaign against a control group, measuring statistical significance, and ensuring the results are reproducible across different demographics.
Precisely. For a high achiever, evidence must be proportional to the claim.
Proportional to the claim.
A foundational belief that's guiding where you invest millions of dollars requires multi-year meta-analysis and rigorous financial modeling, not a charismatic speaker's guarantee at a conference.
So if the proof for a foundational belief is just, I read it in a popular self-help book,
the evidence is inherently too thin to support a multi-year investment of your life. You're required to ask yourself, what proof, measurable or observable, do I have that is externally validated and robust enough to handle high-stakes failure?
this elevates life decisions to the level of scientific inquiry. You basically become a data scientist managing your own reality.
You do.
But I can see how, even with rigorous scrutiny and compelling evidence, the entire process could just fall apart if we lack the third pillar, intellectual honesty.
Intellectual honesty is the non-negotiable gatekeeper. It is the crucial inner work because it requires the willingness to override the ego.
Tell me more about that.
It means acknowledging, without defensiveness or rationalization or deflection, when the evidence undeniably refutes your current belief, even if that belief is the bedrock of your identity. It demands that you place the pursuit of verifiable truth above personal preference, comfort, or what you perceive as stability.
That is emotionally terrifying, especially for high achievers who have built their confidence on past successes that were guided by that very belief.
It's the hardest part.
I'm just imagining a tech founder who built their company on the assumption that consumers value novelty above all else.
Okay.
They spent 5 years and millions of dollars on that assumption. Then the market data comes back, showing consumers actually prioritize reliability and integration. Intellectual honesty demands an immediate radical pivot.
Which means admitting 5 years and millions of dollars were invested based on a flawed premise.
That's a huge pill to swallow.
And this is where we encounter the ultimate enemy of the verified life, the sunk cost fallacy.
Ah, yes.
Without intellectual honesty, that founder will subconsciously minimize the refuting data, they'll rationalize the failure, and they'll double down on the original comfortable belief simply because the cost of admitting they were wrong is just too high.
So intellectual honesty is the defense against that.
It's the only defense. It forces you to separate the investment of your time and money from the verifiable truth of the market.
So let me see if I have this right. Scrutiny is the internal challenge.
Yes.
Evidence is the external validation.
Correct.
And intellectual honesty is the psychological commitment to accept the verdict, no matter the emotional price tag.
That's the elegant synthesis. Intellectual honesty ensures that the entire process is genuine, not just some performative ritual. It allows you to operate from a position of radical agility where you can say, my belief was the best model available up until this moment, but based on new verifiable data, I must update my operating system and pivot immediately.
That willingness to change.
That commitment to reality over self-comfort. That is the defining trait of someone operating under the law of verification.
Okay, so that framework provides the machinery. But how do we translate this high-level philosophy into our daily decisions? The text gives us 4 concrete rules, or operational guidelines, that show up when you commit to verification.
Right, and these rules are the direct defenses against the psychological shortcuts we're constantly taking.
Which are the main way these untested assumptions get into our lives.
Exactly. They address the speed of our thoughts, the nature of our feelings, and the motivation behind adopting new ideas.
Okay, rule number 1. You don't automatically believe your first thought.
This rule is just essential. Our brains are designed for efficiency, not for accuracy, especially in that immediate reaction phase.
You're talking about system 1 thinking.
That's it. Our first thoughts are reactive, they're emotional, they're conditioned, or they're based on the most immediate but often outdated data. So if a client sends a critical email, your first thought might be, I failed, this is career ending.
And the high-stakes danger is when we immediately convert that reactive, catastrophizing thought into a guiding action, like writing an overly defensive reply or just abandoning the project altogether without any mandatory processing time.
The law forces a deliberate pause. That immediate thought has to be labeled hypothesis, not conclusion.
I like that.
Then you have to subject it to the pillars. Scrutiny. Is this thought internally consistent? Have I made far greater mistakes that were not career-ending?
Evidence.
What objective facts in the email support this catastrophe if I divorce them from the harsh tone?
And then the honesty part.
And honesty. Am I reacting from a place of chronic anxiety or past trauma rather than current reality?
But wait a minute, for high achievers and executives, correct decision-making is often praised. It's seen as a hallmark of success. Doesn't this process of hyper-verification risk slowing down critical decision-making when speed is everything?
That's an excellent challenge, and it gets right to the heart of the precision target. Verification is not about slowing down all decisions. It's about slowing down foundational decisions and reactive decisions.
Okay, so there's a distinction.
A huge one. If your verification audit reveals a belief is solid, for example, our core market segment is X, you can then make micro-decisions relating to X with extreme speed and confidence because the foundation is verified.
But actually speeds things up over time.
The law actually speeds up effective decision-making over time by reducing the need for constant second-guessing. It eliminates errors based on those reactive, unverified inputs. That mandatory processing time only applies when a thought directly challenges a foundational belief or requires an irreversible action.
This quality control up front, which generates speed later.
Precisely. You trade a momentary pause for a future increase in speed and certainty.
Okay, that clarifies it. So rule number 2. This one addresses the internal source of faulty data. You don't treat your feelings as facts.
This is maybe the most difficult rule for modern society to adopt because feelings are so, validated.
And they should be, to an extent.
Of course, feelings are undeniably real internal states. If you feel extreme anxiety before a major presentation, that anxiety is real internal data.
Right.
But the interpretation of that feeling is often a profound distortion of external reality.
So the anxiety might tell me, I am an imposter and I will forget every single word.
Yes.
That is a feeling translated into a predictive statement, but it is not a fact.
It's not a fact.
The verifiable facts, the hours of preparation, the successful past presentations, the positive feedback loops, those are the true external reality.
And the law compels us to distinguish between the validity of the internal state, my heart is racing, I feel dread, and the factual accuracy of the external claim, the presentation will fail. When feelings heavily influence a high-stakes decision, say an accomplished professional passing up a promotion because of paralyzing imposter syndrome, or pulling out of a promising negotiation due to immediate financial fear, that decision is based on the unverified assumption that the feeling reflects objective external reality.
So what should we do with feelings?
Feelings should be processed as data input that tells us about our internal state. I am stressed, which means I should take a break, not I feel stressed, which means the project must be flawed. If the verifiable evidence says the opportunity is sound and you are qualified, the feeling of fear should be acknowledged, but it should not be treated as a fact guiding the refusal of that opportunity.
That makes perfect sense. It's about not letting the internal weather report dictate the strategic trajectory of the ship.
Exactly. And this leads us to rule number 3, which is this comprehensive defense against intellectual laziness and herd mentality. You don't adopt beliefs just because they're common, emotional, or convenient.
We need to dedicate some serious time here to dissecting these 3 motivational errors, because I suspect this is where 90% of all foundational flaws come from.
I think you're right.
Let's start with common.
The danger of commonality is the danger of the default path. This is herd mentality, the appeal to tradition, or the generalized industry dogma that has just never been questioned.
And for high achievers, that might look like
It might manifest as accepting the belief that to grow a company, you must constantly sacrifice margins and aggressively chase market share, just like the industry leader does.
the convenience of a common belief is that it requires 0 intellectual effort.
Yeah.
Right? You just outsource your thinking to the crowd or the historical record.
But what's common often isn't optimal.
Not at all.
If the common belief in the tech industry is that all success requires 80-hour work weeks, adopting that without verification means you miss the competitive edge of highly leveraged 40-hour deep work models that might yield exponentially better results without the burnout.
We see this flaw constantly in the startup world, don't we?
Constantly. Founders often adopt the common belief that we must pivot constantly and chase investment. They rarely verify the assumption that a bootstrapped, specialized, high-margin model might offer superior long-term stability and success for their specific market niche.
Commonality is a safety blanket that just masks mediocrity.
Well said.
Okay, let's tackle the emotional pitfall. This is the one that gets the ego hooked.
The emotional pitfall is adopting beliefs because they provide immediate psychological comfort or validation of your identity or a sense of belonging, specifically because they are not verifiable.
It's the self-soothing belief.
It is. For instance, if I believe my lack of success is purely due to external political forces, that is emotionally validating because it removes my personal responsibility and it preserves my self-image of competence.
But if the verifiable evidence, the audit, suggests that my lack of success is actually due to poor execution or inadequate skill development or inconsistent effort,
Right.
adopting that emotionally comforting belief prevents any possibility of improvement. I've just sacrificed truth for temporary ego preservation.
And high achievers are particularly vulnerable to emotional beliefs related to failure. If they fail once, the emotional reaction might drive the belief, I am fundamentally not suited for this level of leadership.
It's a convenient narrative.
It's an emotionally charged, convenient narrative that completely bypasses the evidence that shows the failure was merely due to a fixable skills gap or a single bad tactical decision.
Which brings us to the last one, convenient. This is choosing the path of least intellectual or behavioral resistance.
Convenience is the belief that justifies your current, easy behavior or allows you to avoid difficult, necessary change.
Like an executive who believes.
An executive who believes, my legacy system is too complex to update. That is convenient because it justifies avoiding a massive, painful infrastructure overhaul. The law of verification demands that you choose the belief that aligns with objective reality, even if that reality requires immediate, painful, difficult restructuring.
So when we synthesize these 3, we see the pattern. Commonality makes us intellectually lazy. Emotional adoption makes us self-protective.
Yes.
And convenience makes us complacent. They're like the trifecta of intellectual stagnation.
Exactly. This rule is the operational center of the law. It forces the high achiever to introduce rigor by choosing truth over ease every single time. If a belief feels too easy, too comfortable, or too popular, it must be the first one you scrutinize.
Which brings us to rule number 4, the ultimate defense mechanism. You refuse to let anything become foundational until it has been tested.
And this circles us right back to the core premise of safeguarding that foundational status. The law isn't demanding that you run a full audit on whether you should order chicken or falafel for dinner.
Right, it's not for everything.
It's about safeguarding the core operating system, the beliefs that define your long-term identity, your major financial risk profile, and your commitments to other people.
So it's about defining that highest security clearance. Before any belief is granted the authority to hold the steering wheel of your life,
Mm-hmm.
it has to survive the gauntlet of scrutiny, the internal challenge,
Yes.
evidence, the external proof,
Yes.
and intellectual honesty, accepting the outcome. This is the only way to ensure that your trajectory is driven by reality, not by inherited folklore or emotional reflex.
And high achievers who succeed consistently aren't just talented, they have the highest quality internal maps. They know which beliefs are foundational, and they constantly dedicate resources to verifying them, and that allows them to move with confidence and agility when other people are paralyzed by uncertainty.
When a person truly internalizes and adopts these rules and commits to the three pillars, the result is it's an identity shift. The text says you become the auditor of your own reality. That role change is enormous. What is the day-to-day job of this auditor?
Well, the auditor's job is systematic, objective, and meticulously detailed. They don't accept claims at face value.
They don't generate the claims.
No, they verify the claims against hard, observable data. Think of an independent financial auditor. They aren't there to congratulate the company on its earnings. They are there specifically to find discrepancies, vulnerabilities, and misstatements.
So the auditor is this internal regulator who demands receipts for every single assertion that claims foundational status.
Yes.
It's a profound transition from being a passive recipient of cultural information or a victim of reactive thought to becoming the active, objective manager of your internal truth system.
And this commitment requires a very careful balancing act, which is why the text is so specific in its clarification. It states the goal very clearly, not paranoid, not cold, just precise.
Let's start with paranoia. Why is the verification process explicitly not paranoid? This is a crucial distinction because so many people mistake skepticism for cynicism.
Paranoia is fundamentally based on fear and unchecked negative assumptions. It's actually the opposite of verification.
How so?
Paranoia leads to circular thinking and suspicious vigilance without any structured path to resolution. For example, a paranoid thought is, my team is undermining me, but I can't look at the data because the data might be rigged.
It's a closed system. There's no way out.
Exactly. Verification, on the other hand, is a structured, open investigation driven by inquiry, not by fear. It starts with a hypothesis. Is there a breakdown in communication efficiency on my team? And then it seeks verifiable, data-measurable metrics on project delays, documented feedback loops, objective performance indicators.
The goal is different.
The goal of verification is clarity and mitigation. The result of paranoia is only increased anxiety and intellectual paralysis.
So if you're setting up a major investment, paranoia says, assume the broker is trying to cheat you. Verification says, what specific due diligence regulatory compliance checks? Historical performance data, verified contractual clauses must I scrutinize to mitigate common, predictable, verifiable risks.
It's pragmatic risk management, not baseless fear.
And then there's the distinction from being cold. The fear is that this rigorous objectivity eliminates the essential human elements, intuition, empathy, emotional connection.
But being precise does not eliminate these factors. It simply ensures they do not override verifiable truth in high-impact decision-making.
In fact, you could argue that precision enables deeper emotional engagement.
How do you mean?
Well, if I am operating from a precise, verified understanding of reality, I am not wasting my emotional energy fighting imaginary battles based on flawed assumptions. I can dedicate my genuine emotional resources, my empathy, my passion, my connection, where they are actually effective and grounded in truth. Precision makes your emotions higher quality.
I love that. Higher quality emotions. Precision is the absolute target state. It's the ability to see the world exactly as it is. No narrative exaggeration, no self-serving rationalization, no fear clouding the interpretation of the data.
And that precision gives you the most accurate and reliable starting point for any strategic move,
allowing you to deploy your resources, your time, and your attention with maximum impact.
Now let's bring this back powerfully to our high achiever listener, integrating that level up, the enlightened edge context. We know this audience is constantly looking for strategies, for practical hacks for success. How does the law of verification serve as the necessary precept for any effective strategy?
What's truly fascinating is that this law is the foundational integrity check for any hack. High achievers often fall prey to the latest craze, the 7 steps to ultimate success, the 1-hour morning routine. But if the underlying premise of that routine or strategy is an untested assumption, the hack will, over time, fail.
And even cause harm.
And even cause harm.
Can you give us another high-stakes example of a failed foundational assumption in the modern workplace?
Sure. Take the common, convenient assumption that All valuable work must be collaborative and visible.
Oh, that's a big one.
A high achiever adopts this hack, so they're constantly in meetings, replying instantly on Slack, maximizing their visibility. But what if, for their specific high-value role, like strategic planning or complex coding, the verifiable evidence shows that their best results only emerge from long, uninterrupted blocks of deep work?
Then the hack is actually counterproductive.
Completely. The law of verification compels them to audit that collaborative visibility assumption. Scrutiny reveals the motivation is fear of being perceived as absent. Evidence reveals that 90% of that collaborative time is low value.
And intellectual honesty.
Intellectual honesty demands they reject the common and convenient belief and replace it with the verified truth. High-value work requires prioritized solitude and focused effort.
And once that truth is verified, then they can adopt the correct, truly enlightened edge hack.
Right. Strict time blocking, turning off notifications, clearly communicating boundaries, and they can do it with supreme confidence.
They aren't just following a trend.
No, they're building a strategy on reality. Verification ensures that the habits you adopt are actually effective and aligned with your specific reality, not just popular dogma or what worked for some charismatic influencer in a completely different field.
This is the source of profound confidence.
It is. They know they aren't working hard on assumptions. They're working hard on strategies that have been audited, checked, and proven to deliver results. That is the true enlightened edge. It eliminates that internal friction and allows for ruthless focus and execution.
It provides clarity in a world of information overload. And that is perhaps the most valuable commodity for anyone operating at a high level. This deep dive has been a powerful exploration into the essential architecture of our beliefs. To recap the law of verification, it is the refusal to build your life on anything that hasn't been tested. It demands that every foundational belief, the ones guiding your biggest decisions, must survive those three pillars of scrutiny, evidence, and intellectual honesty.
And the payoff is nothing short of an identity transformation. You stop operating reactively based on fear, common convenience, or emotional comfort. You achieve a state of high-impact precision as the objective auditor of your own reality, ensuring your strategies are genuinely effective.
That is the highest standard we can possibly hold ourselves to, particularly when the stakes are so high in our professional trajectories and our personal lives.
And if the law requires constant radical retesting of foundational beliefs, if it demands we reject those common, convenient, or emotional assumptions, here's a final thought for you to carry forward. A way to immediately challenge your internal status quo.
Okay, let's hear it.
What is the single most convenient or common belief you hold today about your market, your capabilities, or your limits? A belief that has provided you great comfort but lacks rigorous evidence that you are now compelled to submit to rigorous scrutiny starting this afternoon.
Wow, that is a profoundly challenging assignment and exactly the kind of critical thinking required to apply the law of verification every single day. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we encourage you to immediately begin applying these principles as you audit your reality.